So the Derek Chauvin trial is to the jury, and the only thing left to be done is justice. And justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So given what we saw during the course of the Derek Chauvin trial, closing arguments today went pretty much as expected. Prosecutor Steve Schleicher gave a thorough, professional closing argument. The defense attorney, Eric Nelson, I thought was sort of equal parts overreaching and underwhelming. I didn't think he was particularly effective. And then prosecutor Jerry Blackwell gave the government's rebuttal argument, and I thought he was strong. And I like that he concluded with the following line. He said, George Floyd had an enlarged heart, but he didn't die because his heart was too big. He died because Derek Chauvin's heart was too small. So let's just do a quick recap of some of what we saw in the closing arguments. Prosecutor Schleicher started by saying George Floyd's name. He said his name was George Perry Floyd Jr. He said his name. George Perry Floyd Jr., a human being of value, murdered by Derek Chauvin and his fellow officers. Prosecutor Schleicher also had some memorable lines and what I thought was some important, effective imagery when he said things like this, quote, George Floyd, face down on the pavement for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, the pavement beneath him was as unyielding as the men on top of him, pushing him down. Regarding the most serious charge facing Derek Chauvin, second-degree murder, which is an unintentional killing during the course of a felony, here is what Prosecutor Schleicher said. He said, quote, this was a straight-up felony assault by Derek Chauvin, and that makes it second-degree murder. And I thought Prosecutor Schleicher was just clear as a bell in his argument. And then he highlighted, I think, what can only be called the sadistic nature of this murder by Derek Chauvin when he said the following. He said, when other officers said, I think he's passing out, Derek Chauvin wouldn't let up and wouldn't get up. When his fellow officer said, I can't find a pulse, Derek Chauvin wouldn't let up and wouldn't get up. So let's take on defense attorney Eric Nelson's closing argument, because he took what little he had and he made even less of it. He actually said that all 5 of the medical expert witnesses called by the prosecution were wrong, were mistaken, were not to be credited. Not the forensic pathologists, not the cardiologist, not the pulmonologist, not the toxicologist, not the emergency room physician. They were all wrong when they said George Floyd died of low oxygen in his blood, that he was asphyxiated. They were all wrong. It was really the heart disease, the drugs in George's system, the tumor in his hip that he didn't even know was there, most likely, the adrenaline in his body. It was everything but the officers who deprived him of enough oxygen. All those other things are what killed him. He actually called the testimony of the 5 prosecution expert medical witnesses, quote, preposterous, close quote. You know, I found Eric Nelson's closing argument to be insulting, demeaning, not only of the medical professionals, but of the jury and the jurors' common sense. You know, he reminded me of a used car salesman. All due respect to used car salesmen, I'm sure there are lots of great, honest, honorable ones, but Eric Nelson is the kind of guy who would try to sell a car to the jury, and he would say, you know, look at that beautiful gleaming paint job. Not a nick, not a dent on the car. And the jurors would say, well, how does it run? And he would say, do you see the tires? Look, barely used, brand new tires on this car. And the jurors would say, yeah, but mechanically, is it a good car? He would say, did you see the leather? Supple, unblemished leather in this car. And the jurors would say, what about the engine? And they would pry open the hood, and there's no engine in the car. That's Eric Nelson, his closing argument. All wax job, no engine. And then prosecutor Jerry Blackwell took Eric Nelson to task in the prosecution's rebuttal argument. He rebutted the relatively few points defense attorney Nelson made, saying things like, you know, so George Floyd picked that moment to die of underlying heart disease. He picked that moment to die of a drug overdose. He picked that moment to die because he had a tumor in his hip, or because he had a surge of adrenaline. He picked that moment to die. It had nothing to do with the unlawful, unreasonable, excessive force being put on his neck and his torso, and his body being positioned in a way that he had insufficient oxygen to survive. And Jerry Blackwell said, you know, the force was so obviously excessive that even a child could see it, and the child did see it. That 9-year-old witness who saw what was going on and said to a police officer, get off him. A 9-year-old child. Get off him. And now the case is with the jury. And now we wait. In a literal sense, we now wait for justice for George Floyd. Given how well the prosecution tried the case, and given how weak the defense was, not every case lends itself to a compelling defense, and this one sure didn't. But given all of that, I do believe that for George Floyd, justice is coming. And I know that justice matters. As always, folks, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.